All right, it's on the hour. We're going to just wait another 3 minutes, um, just to let everyone get sign on to the call. And
Testing, testing.
all right, everyone, welcome to another webinar for decoding seismic data. My name is Branden Christensen, and I am one of the owners and founders of Raspberry Shake, and also a seismologist by training. I'm supported today by Faustino and Giuseppe. Faustino is also a seismologist at Raspberry Shake, and Giuseppe is there supporting us in technical support. Um, just a little bit about what we're going to do today. Today, we're going to talk about how to identify earthquakes. And for that purpose, we're going to be using the tools Station View and Data View. We have a very special example today. We're going to be working with the earthquake that happened in Northern California last week, the magnitude 7. And then we're going to look at how that propagates around the world and how that's detected on Raspberry Shakes and different parts of the world. A little bit about the logistics of how today's meeting is going to go. This first thing is that this and the previous webinar will be available on YouTube. So if you missed the previous one, you can jump in and you can watch that again. And if you want to rewatch anything here or share it around, that'll be available on YouTube. Um, the way we're going to structure this is similar to last time. I'm going to be guiding us for about 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes through looking at different seismic events in Station View and Data View. And during that time, I will have my entire focus on sharing with you. But you're able to chat us in the Zoom chat, and Giuseppe and Faustino will be available to answer questions in near real time. They'll also be gathering some of the questions for the end of the call. And so at the end of the call, we'll do 15 or 20 minutes of questioning in which you can raise your hand and answer and get a question answered. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can just push it into the chat as well. Giuseppe and Faustino are invited to interrupt me if they think that there's a question that is worth dealing with in real time, especially if it involves clarifying some of the use of data view and station view. And yeah, I think that that establishes kind of how we're going to work through this. We'll begin here with our first example. And so we're going to go over here to station view. We're going to zoom out. One of the things I want to celebrate as we begin is that our network is now over 2,500 stations online and streaming and at any time. And so that is about, let's say, 7 or 8,000 channels streaming in real time. And so the network continues to grow at a pretty good pace. If we come over here to California, okay. So here's all of these aftershocks from the larger magnitude 7 event that happened back on the, let's see, that happened on the, oh, you know what? I'm not working with the California event today. Giuseppe, you sent me you
You
sent me
working
the other event.
you
I'm
working
working
with
with the
Vanuatu.
Banatsu event. That's right. Okay, we're gonna go on the other side of the globe. We'll come back over in the direction of California, but yeah, we're gonna look at a more recent, larger event. Okay. Sorry for that confusion. I got so excited with the event that you sent me yesterday, Giuseppe, that I decided to switch gears last minute. Okay,
Mhm.
great. So that event happened on just yesterday. That was on the 17th of December. And I'm just going to scroll over to it here. Looks like I have a bit of a lag issue. Um, so we'll have to struggle with that this meeting. Okay. All right. So we're going to be looking at this sequence. Here's this magnitude 7.3 event that happened in Vanuatu. This was on the 17th, so this is just a day ago. This is a really big event. This is an event that's big enough that it should be seen at most of the Raspberry Shakes across the globe, and so that's why we're going to work with this one. I'm going to close out this event, and I'm just going to queue up our first seismic station that we're going to look at. We're going to start in the near field, and then we're going to work further away. And so we'll start probably tens of kilometers away from the epicenter, and then we're gonna look at the event as it changes in data view in terms of frequency content as we go from around 10 kilometers away from the event to around 10,000. So we'll just go on right on the other side of the globe. And so the first station we're going to start out with is 53B7. Okay, so this is pretty close to this event here. If I click on the event after choosing the station, and click on the station, we can see that we're about, we're starting about 600 kilometers away. But you can see there's a really high signal to noise ratio. There's a really high amplitude of this event. Okay, so we're going to choose this station, open that up. We're going to click on the waveform here, and that's going to bring us into data view. And then we're going to go back in time. We're going to go back one day. So for the larger earthquakes and for the near field earthquakes, data view is often labeling the earthquake for you, so it's very easy to identify. But even without the earthquake label, you can see that this one is big enough that at signal to noise ratio, it really sticks out well. And so we're going to click on that earthquake, and then we're going to zoom out a little bit because I want to be able to see the entire earthquake. Okay, so here's an example of a really clear onset for the initial primary wave of the earthquake. And then you can see a little bit of time goes by, and then you end up with this other secondary amplitude. This is the S wave. And so this is the really strong motion that typically does damage in an earthquake. You can notice that between the arrival of the P wave and the S wave, there's a considerable gap in time. And so this one is around it's around 1 minute. And the reason for that is that this earthquake has already traveled through about 600 kilometers of crust of the earth. And the primary waves and the secondary waves, because they're different types of waves, they're traveling at different velocities. And so the primary wave might be traveling, for example, at around 3,500 meters per second, and the secondary wave might be traveling around 2,500 meters per second. So 3.5 kilometers per second, 2.5 kilometers per second. Now, over time, one begins to lag with respect to the other, and that ends up creating the separation between the P and the S wave. And so just before we go into the spectrogram, because we're now in the regional field, we're not in the local field, we're not 10 kilometers or so away from the source of this event, what you'd expect to see here is that some of the frequency content, the high frequency content, has actually been filtered out. And so I'm just going to click over here to go over to the toggle into the spectrogram view. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit more just to make the signal stand out a little bit better. And let's just describe for newcomers to the spectrogram space what we're looking at. On the bottom axis, you're looking at the same thing that we were looking at before. This hasn't changed. This is time. And in the waveform view, we're looking at amplitude on this axis over here. Now, when we go into the spectrogram view, the axis changes. We go over to frequency. And now amplitude information is contained in the intensity of the color of the spectrogram. And this is a very useful tool for the spectrogram itself for looking at the earthquake signal and be able to pull out interesting characteristics. So my recommendations to users is to very quickly get into the spectrogram view because it's set up in a way that your eye can easily grasp the information, and it brings out the frequency content of the event in a way that's very powerful. And we'll show that here. Before focusing on the earthquake itself, which I'll outline now, okay, this part right here, I want you to focus on everything that's going on around the earthquake. Look at these horizontal lines of high frequency content. And so there's a frequency signal that's around 42 hertz, 39 hertz. There's another one at maybe 28 hertz or so. There's another one down here at 14 hertz or so. And these are moving across the entire spectrogram in time. And you can see them extremely well here. And likely what they are is some kind of mechanical signature, like maybe this is installed in somebody's home, and all of these different horizontal lines are essentially, it could be turbines, it could be the fan in the computer nearby, it could be the fan in the fridge, it could be an air conditioner, anything like that. When you switch over to the waveform view, tell me if you can, try to see the same information. You can't see it, right? And the reason you can't see it is twofold. One of it just kind of looks like undifferentiated noise to the human eye when you're looking at the waveform. But then there's a large amplitude signal, which is the earthquake here, that swamps everything else out. And so when you look at the signal, all you see is the earthquake. You don't actually see the details of everything else that's going on in the background. So keep your eye on where the earthquake is. We'll switch back and forth between spectrogram and the view of the waveforms or the wiggles. Okay, now that we switch back and forth, take a look at the intensity of the colors, okay? Those are the highest amplitudes. And notice how they correspond to the waveform. And so in this view, you see very well that there's an initial high energy primary wave. There's kind of a low where there's this region of lower energy, and then there's a high energy signature again that is in the lower frequencies, okay? And so the higher frequency data is in that primary wave, and then you have lower frequency concentrations in the secondary wave. And the secondary wave generally carries the highest energy, low frequency information. Um, okay, so we'll actually step back to the map for a moment, and I want to see if we can find a station that is closer to the source. So I'll come back over here. I'll get rid of my station filter. We have a shake and boom here that's right on top of the earthquake. I'm just going to open that real quick to see if there's any interesting seismic data in the near source, in the near field. Okay, we're going to go back in time to the 17th again. Here's that earthquake. Okay, now without opening it, what I'd expect to see, because we're so close to the source, let's take a look at how close we are. We pull up the earthquake, we click on the station, 30 kilometers away, as opposed to 600 kilometers away. What I'd expect to see is a lot, and you can already see it here on the right-hand side, a lot more high frequency data. So let's compare these two. Okay, I'm going to zoom out a little bit, drop in the spectrogram. And now notice here that this earthquake has high frequency data all the way up to the limit of where we're able to record, which is the 50 hertz limit here. And so this has high frequency data in a broad spectrum at the onset of the event. And notice that you can't really see the secondary wave very well. So we're here, we're so close to the source that the secondary and the primary wave are basically right on top of each other. There hasn't been enough distance that the earthquake has moved through the earth for these two waves, which have different velocities, to begin to separate. So let's do a little side-by-side comparison of these two. I'm going to change our view here just like this. So here we are, we're about 30 kilometers away from the epicenter, and here we are about 600. And so notice the difference in the way that this earthquake is manifesting at these two stations. Pop over to the spectrogram view, and now look at the difference between these two with distance. So here we are again, very close to the source, very high energy across all frequencies from low to high. And then here you are, you have a lot less energy concentrated, and you're topping out here at what, 30 hertz or so. So in this distance from 30 to 600 kilometers, you've already lost a lot of the frequency content in the 30 to 50 hertz range. And that's because the Earth is just a great high frequency filter. It's filtering it out. It works the same way with sound. High frequency sounds travel very short distances, and low frequency sounds can travel thousands of kilometers. Okay, so the next thing I want to point out here, and before we move to another station, is if you see this pattern already, we're losing high frequency data as we go near to far away from the source. What you would expect as we stepped out even further is that all of this high frequency information from the 10 to 30 hertz range would get lost at some point. So let's pull up another station and take a look. Come back over here to station view. We'll click out of this earthquake, and we'll look for our next station. This one is going to be 9VAD. And I'm going to just zoom out. Okay, so here we are. We're still pretty close to the earthquake source, right? Let's see how far away we are now. zoom out a little bit. We are about 3,000 kilometers away. So we're 2 orders of magnitude away from this event, which was very local. And so let's pull this one up. Let's take a look at the data for this earthquake. Step back in time here to the 17th. And all right, so I can see where the system is labeling the earthquake, but I can't actually see it with my naked eye. And so we need to do some adjustments here. There's a few different ways to do this in data view. You can increase amplification using these tools. So if I just click up, you can see that the earthquake begins to appear. And there it is. You can see it pretty easily. And the other way to do this, if I come back to where the earthquake wasn't apparent, is to choose different scales. So we can try the clip scale. That one really isn't producing good results in this case. We could try RMS. RMS does a little better job. You can see the earthquake coming out right here. And so there's a few different ways to interface with data view in order to be able to amplify the signal and be able to see it with respect to all the noise. So let's pull this earthquake up. We're going to zoom out a little bit. Okay. And then we're going to switch over to, actually, before we switch over to spectrogram view, let's take a look and let's see how things look just in the waveform view. And so I'm going to step here from near field to far field. So here we are, 30 kilometers away. Here we are, 600 kilometers away. Here we are, over 3,000 kilometers away. And notice how the earthquake has changed with distance. We're going to come in now to the spectrogram view. We're going to start again in the near field. Here we are 30 kilometers away. Here we are 600 kilometers away. And here we are 3,000 kilometers away. And notice that there's a really high energy in the low frequencies, and there's almost no energy at the higher frequencies. So the low frequencies are here below 10 hertz. And then above that, there's almost no information about the earthquake. So beautiful, beautiful example here. All right, we'll step out a little bit further. Let's go back to station view. Let's pull up a station that's really far away. Let's pull up the one that is at 6B2E. Where are you? Okay, we're over here in Morocco. All right, there we are. And I'm going to pull up the earthquake, click on the station. All right, so here we are. We're almost 20,000 kilometers away now from that earthquake. So pretty good distance. And I'm going to pull that earthquake up now. Okay, now I'm going to have to adjust the scale because the scale is kept across all views. I'm going to come down here and we're going to step back in time. And we're going to look at that earthquake now. I don't see it here, right? And so I know it's here, but we're going to have to search for it a little bit. So let me show you the tools to search for it. Number one tool would be to look at the time of the earthquake. And so you can look at, it starts at 01:47 in UTC time. So if we come over here and we pull up that same time window, UTC is on the left-hand axis here. So 01:47 is down here. Where are we at? Okay, here it is. Zooming out just a little bit. Cannot see it, so I'll switch over to the spectrogram view and see if we see anything that's in the very low frequencies. Nothing there. Okay, so why might that be, right? Um, we can actually get an insight into why we're not seeing it here by looking at our other stations. So look here, that near source, the arrival time is 1:47. We step away to 600 kilometers away, the arrival time is 1:48. Okay, so we're about a minute difference. And then we're at 1:53. And so the further away you get from the earthquake, the later the earthquake's arriving because it actually takes time to move through the earth. And so we know that at around 3,000 kilometers away, it's at 1:53. So maybe we got to look somewhere in this region a little bit later to see this earthquake. So we'll just scroll through here. Okay, I'm at 1:49. I still really don't see it. Still not seeing it. We're now into minute 2. I'm gonna click forward a little bit. Okay, here we're at 2:08 and we have a low frequency signal that's barely visible. Okay, and this is likely the earthquake, but we need to confirm it. I'm gonna zoom out just a little bit here so we can see it fully. So the earthquake hit magnitude 7, hit the source at our first station 30 kilometers away at 1:47. Here we are 20 minutes later, right? And it's just being registered potentially. So in the spectrogram view, we go to the previous, you can see that we had a bunch of energy in the low frequencies. We're further away. We have even less high frequency energy. It's really concentrated in the low frequencies here. And so um, we want to determine if this is actually the earthquake. And the best way to do that is to think, well, what are we going to see this far away? And what we're going to see this far away is really just surface waves, waves that are kind of ringing across the surface of the Earth. And they have the high amplitudes, as you see here, at very low frequencies. So what we can do to confirm that this is what we're actually seeing is we can get out of the waveform view here, and we can apply a filter to the entire heliquarter plot, the last 24 hours, and then look for long period waves. And so I'm going to use this filter option here. We have some default filters. We'll go to the one that's preset for global and see what that provides for us. We'll just hit apply. And there it is. You can see the earthquake really well. And you can see, let's click in, let's see what time it is. Yep, there it is, about 2:08. So we confirm that that's actually the earthquake. But there's an even better filter we can use. I'm going to go a custom filter, and I'm going to do something very low frequency. I'm going to go from 0.001, so almost 0 hertz, to 0.1 hertz. And look at that, you can see the earthquake really well here too. And now you get an appreciation for just how long this earthquake was ringing, okay? When you open up the spectrogram view here, you can kind of be mistaken in thinking here that the earthquake began at 2:08 and it kind of petered out around here at 2:10. Even if we zoom out, it's hard to see in the spectrogram view that it was ringing for so long, just because it's so low frequency. But this is a beautiful example. This earthquake began at this station at around 2:08, and then way over here, hours later, the Earth is still ringing at this station, right? So this is a really fun way to see this. I thought this would be a good example for us to do this week because it shows you a lot about earthquake dynamics, shows you a lot about how to identify an earthquake with distance from the source, what to look for when you're near field to the earthquake and then far field, and then how the signal changes with distance. And so when you're looking for earthquakes that are really far away from you, like let's say you're in England and you're looking for this earthquake, you're not going to be looking at it at the reported time. You're going to be then thinking, okay, it took maybe 20 minutes to arrive at my house if it's over 10,000 kilometers away. So I know that I have to start looking for it a little bit later. Uh, okay. I'm gonna actually mention one more thing that I thought was curious about Raspberry Shake, just as an anecdote, and then I'll open the floor for questions. Um, when Raspberry Shake was launched on its Kickstarter campaign 8 years ago, we were really focused on bringing a solution for monitoring local earthquakes. We thought that was really important. But we were using the core design of Raspberry Shake came from cannibalizing past designs of seismometers. So we'd already been designing seismometers for 7 or 8 years prior to launching our Kickstarter campaign. And in the earliest days, we designed our first seismometer to meet the needs of the Volcano Disaster Assistance Program in the USGS. And when we met with them, they were really interested in having a geophone that could detect all the high frequency events at an earthquake. But they also wanted to see some lower frequency volcanic signals. And so what we did is we used some tricks in electronics to extend the natural detection limits of a geophone down to lower frequencies. So we're taking something that is called a geophone that's commonly used in oil and gas exploration, and we're repurposing it for volcano monitoring. When we launched our Kickstarter campaign, it kind of wasn't spoken that we were going to remove that period extension from the circuit. And we were really wrapped up with and having to deliver in 3 months a solution that hadn't been built yet to over 900 people around the world. Lots of problems to solve. And so that particular circuit didn't really get our attention until the station started coming up on station view. And the highest density network that started popping up was in England. And I had this moment where I was like, uh-oh, all of our English clients could potentially be a little bit upset with us because they bought in this instrument that's designed for local earthquake detection, and there's very little local seismicity in England. And then our earliest English backers started reporting on Twitter that they were detecting earthquakes that were 6 and 10,000 kilometers away. And I breathed a huge sigh of relief because that came from that same period extension that was intended for volcanoes that was allowing them to see earthquakes that were further off in the distance. And as you can see here with this example with the surface waves of this earthquake that is really far away from the station, like over 10,000 kilometers away, that's something that makes this really exciting. You know, the ability to detect these large earthquakes anywhere in the world using a comparatively inexpensive device in seismology. So I'll stop sharing there and I'll just open the floor for questions. Giuseppe, do you have any questions that we should start with here?
So let me take up my list because we had. I apologize if I butcher the pronunciation of your name, but Mikhail Pachenko that raised his hand earlier during your presentation. So if you still want to ask your question, feel free.
Yeah, just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
No, the hand raise was an error at the time. Okay, well, no trouble, no trouble. So there were observations, Branden, about the fact that some stations in the shadow zone will display a different set of waveforms compared to other stations which are not. Maybe maybe you can expand a bit on what the shadow zone is and how it reflects on what someone can observe from the Raspberry Shakes.
Okay, Giuseppe, you actually have a deeper understanding than this than I do. I'll start, and if you have any interesting facts that you want to add, go ahead and jump in. And so the the shadow zone, well, it's called the shadow zone, and that's kind of a fun name for it. But basically, what it's communicating is that the earthquake energy, in order to get to your Raspberry Shake, it's moving across the surface of the Earth, but it's also moving through the Earth. And so what's moving across the surface of the Earth is likely to be detected at every station around the globe, especially if it's a larger event like the one that we're looking at here. But there's, in addition to the surface waves, there's actually the waves that are created at depth by the earthquake itself, and then they're pushed in. You can imagine them being pushed into the Earth. And as they're pushed into the Earth, they're traveling through the crust, then the mantle, and then some of them are moving through the core of the Earth. Other ones are getting reflected by it. And there is a certain angle, I believe, of incidence in which the waves interface with the core of the Earth and then are returned, and they don't actually make it through that mantle core boundary and then the core mantle boundary to get up to where your station is. So that creates a limited zone that's called the shadow zone, where you actually won't see the same earthquake information at that place. Is that a accurate description, Giuseppe?
Yes, I would say so. And one of the
do you remember how wide the shadow zone is?
Yes, shadow zone is defined as let's not complicate this too much. So shadow zone is usually defined as with degrees. That is, degrees between the epicenter of the earthquake and the receiving stations. So until now, we spoke about distances in kilometers, which it's more than enough, because we can use easy to understand limits and say that the shadow zone usually goes from 11,000 kilometers between the station and the earthquake to 15,000 kilometers. So if you are in that space, well, you will not see any P wave, and you will not see any S wave on your Raspberry Shake, and you will have to dig deeper and to find something that resembles a waveform. I don't know if we have a good one for this particular earthquake, Branden.
Yeah, and this is a pretty advanced topic, and I think for the broader audience, maybe the important part of this is to just say that if you're in that zone of 11,000 to 15,000 kilometers away from the earthquake and you're not seeing the earthquake, it's because you're in the shadow zone, and that's normal. So look for another earthquake, right? That's not that you're not that far away from not in that sweet spot. So
I have my hand up. Can I come in here, please?
Sure, you can, Pete.
Absolutely, Pete.
Thank you. Right. The zone with no P or S waves, neither P nor S waves return, is between 103 and 143 degrees of latitude. So between where you are and 103 degrees, you get both P and S waves. And then between earthquake between 103 and 143, neither. And then from 143 round to the opposite side of the globe, you will get P waves only, but no S waves, because the liquid core scrubs out the S waves.
Yeah, very good. Thank you for that clarification, Pete. Pete, while we have you on, do you have any questions that you want to ask?
Not at this moment, no. Thank you very much. I'm enjoying the talk very much.
All right, thank you for coming.
Welcome.
If anyone else has any questions, feel free to raise your hand, and then Giuseppe will call you in.
Yeah, we have Michelle Mahanheim, so feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. Maybe there are some technical problems.
Who do you got next on the list there, Giuseppe?
Yes. There is Amanda Brown in chat that asks if is there any plan to integrate Raspberry Shake with AI for like analysis, summaries, or whatever else comes to mind.
Yeah, we had the same question the last time, right?
Yeah.
The short answer is yes, absolutely. A little bit of background on this is that in the seismological community, the seismological community has been meeting about, talking about, and iterating on machine learning for over a decade, I think. Maybe it hasn't been that long, but it feels like it's been that long. Certainly been in the last 5 years. There's been a lot of talk of machine learning at the conferences. Not really AI, but that was the focus of the approach. And with the recent renaissance in AI, I'm sure the focus is going to shift from machine learning into using artificial intelligence for looking at earthquakes. At Raspberry Shake, we're watching with great interest everything that's happening in the agentic space, especially with AI agents as they're coming into the crypto space and looking and seeing and how they're being used. And we're very interested in rolling out AI integrated tools within the Raspberry Shake, but we're not there yet. We're kind of, this is the very new frontier. We're super keen on it. We're watching very closely, and we're imagining what it's going to be like when we actually have an AI agent that is, integrated into DataView or integrated into our earthquake feeds, or are integrated into our servers and helping us manage all the data in real time, or doing all the data picking, perhaps with a training data set that allows it to easily identify and then annotate the entire heliquarter plot. Like you've seen, we had the earthquakes labeled here, but a really beautiful extension of that would be to be able to have an AI agent moving through the data in real time and then flagging helicopters and washing machines and different forms of cultural noise and explosions and quarry blasts and teleseismic local regional events. And so I don't know when that's going to happen, but things are happening so quickly in the space. I'm hopeful that it happens very soon. So we actually had a meeting internally yesterday where we talked about allocating resources to this next year. And that was the first time that we had that serious conversation. So thank you for your question.
Yes, Michel speaking. Do you hear me now?
Yes, we do,
Yes.
Michel.
Okay, wonderful. I have a question about propagation time or propagation speed. I am in France. I'm located in France, and I see the Vanuatu earthquake 20 minutes after it had been. And if I calculate the speed, I find something like 14 kilometers per second. You are speaking about 4 or 2 kilometers per second. Why this difference?
Okay, so the propagation properties of an earthquake are highly dependent on the crust. And so if you want to talk in global averages, you might say that the P wave is traveling at maybe 4 to 6 kilometers per second, and the S wave is somewhere in the range of 2 to 3 kilometers per second. But you can have a lot of local variability. Like you could have a highly dense crustal structure in the near field to an earthquake that allows it to travel at much higher speeds. And so it really comes down to that.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thanks.
You're very welcome.
Okay, let's see if there is anyone else with a raised hand. Doesn't seem so. We have a question. from the chat. Is it possible, Branden, to calculate the earthquake magnitude using the data from Raspberry Shake?
Swarm anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You can use Swarm to calculate the code of magnitude. And that's a magnitude that's basically calculated on the amount of time, or the length of the earthquake after the initial onset. Raspberry Shakes, then any other type of magnitude calculation is more complicated. And within seismology, there's many types of magnitude calculations. And those require either using network data or more complicated algorithms. But if you look up code of magnitude, that's actually something that you can do essentially with a piece of paper and a ruler, or a ruler and your computer screen. It's pretty easy, and it'll give you a rough estimate of how big the earthquake was.
Great, Branden. Thanks. We have Hugh Morrell with his raised hand, so feel free to ask.
Can you hear me?
We do.
Yes, you can hear you.
Yeah, great. I was just wondering, your filters that you use, what sort of algorithms are you using? You're using Butterworth or fast Fourier transform? I just wondered how the maths is working.
Yeah, exactly. I believe it's a Butterworth filter, and we can maybe check that. So if I click on the settings icon here in data view, and I go to the filter section, so the hero quarter filter, we don't actually provide that, huh? Giuseppe, I haven't looked at this in a long time. I would imagine we're using a Butterworth filter.
We are using the Butterworth filter, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you
very
very
welcome.
much.
One of the things to note is in data view, and then we'll take that next question. And you're looking at data view, if you can see my mouse, and you're switching between filters, we're posting the filter up here so that you're aware of what it is that you're looking at. So if I change that back to global, apply, you'll be able to see the global filter and then what the frequency range is. So that's always posted at the top of the heliquarter. Go ahead, Giuseppe, with the next question.
Yeah, we have maybe a curious one. Does frozen? We have a user that lives in Alaska, and the question is, does frozen ground change what I can see on my Raspberry Shake or not?
I don't really. I mean, the answer has to be yes, because the subsurface is acting like a filter, right? And it's changing what you see. It's changing what earthquake information can actually move through, actually make it through to your Raspberry Shake. So the answer is yes, but I don't know in what way or how. But basically, the earthquake is going to look different at every Raspberry Shake around the world because there's always local side effects.
All right, thank you, Branden. And now we have another question from the chat. I don't think we have checked this in the background, Branden, but there is a question about any corresponding infrasound signal for the same earthquake, and now that's captured at different sites.
Yeah, earthquakes can definitely generate infrasound, especially if they're large earthquakes. And I don't have an example here. One of the curiosities, maybe I can just pull one up. Maybe I'll go something that's near the source.
The closest station had it was a shake and boom, the closest one.
All right, so let's pull up that one.
And
yeah, it's got an HDF channel. I'll open that, and we'll just step back to the 17th. Is this because of my filter? I can't see it?
Shouldn't be.
Okay.
There's a sampling.
Yeah, it looks like I
Yes.
B2. This is about 30 kilometers away from the source.
Here we go.
There it is.
Yeah.
Okay, step
The
back
only
to the
thing with this
17th.
station is that we had a data transmission interruption. Well, after the earthquake.
Okay, so we're looking at the infrasound channel.
Should be the line below the one. Yeah, it's
there we go. All right. All right, so there you see the earthquake. Now, and you see it really nicely on the infrasound. Now, what I don't know here is if this is actually the earth shaking that's pushing the atmosphere up and down. I imagine that's happening. Or if this is something like some local artifact that's created inside of the Raspberry Shake. So I imagine that what's happening here is that the surface of the Earth is actually, because it's moving so much, right? Because there's such a big earthquake, that it is compressing the atmosphere above it, and that is what's being registered here inside the Raspberry Shake. But here's, yeah, it's a pretty clear example that there is an infrasound signal for the Raspberry Shake and boom that's associated with the earthquake. You can imagine that this is also dependent on the type of earthquake that's happening and whether it is sub-ocean or continental, and then the sense of the motion as well. So if you have a really large earthquake that is like that it's strike slip, it's likely to displace less atmosphere than something that's a normal fault or a thrust fault, where you're actually moving a large volume of mass up or down, which is pushing the atmosphere around. Giuseppe, I think we can take maybe just two more questions.
Yes, let's see if there is. So we don't have anyone with a raised hand. If anyone has any more questions in the chat, just send a message or raise your hand and we'll take it.
All right, Giuseppe, I think it's a good moment to close then. I want to thank everyone for coming out and sharing with us. The marketing team at Raspberry Shake has created a very special discount code just for this audience. It is Wiggle20. We'll put that in the chat. And that's going to give you, for hobbyist purposes, a 20% discount for the Christmas holidays. And that we'll have that special running, and we'll have that be valid until December 25th. So we really appreciate your time. We appreciate your curiosity, appreciate your questions, and we look forward to seeing many of you again next month. And thank you for your comment, Pete.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Branden.
All right, take care, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.